Hello, valued viewers. I hope you're all doing very well. And just a quick reminder that the Super Thanks button is on and it is located near the like button on the taskbar. And any contribution is greatly appreciated and will be recognized in the next video. And also, if you contribute $20 or more, you get your own video of choice. And all you do is contribute that amount. And in the comments section of that video that you did the Super Thanks in, you just tell me what you want to do. And your video takes priority over anything that I have going on. And with that, let's get on with the video. Enjoy. Lying directly below the Siskiyou Pass in Oregon, Tunnel 13 was excavated in 1887 through more than a half-mile bedrock. Tunnel 13 was at the highest point along the southern Pacific Mainline between Portland, Oregon and Southern California. The steep uphill grade from Ashland required an extra locomotive to get the train to the tunnel's east portal on the north side of the pass. There, at the busy Siskiyou workstation, trainmen conducted brake tests and other safety functions. Three brothers, Hugh, and twins Ray and Roy d'Altremont, had discovered a cabin in the timber above the tunnel and had used it as a base of operations. There they stockpiled food, firearms, and a full box of dynamite, and also a plunger-type detonator. The twin brothers Ray and Roy were 23 in 1923, and the third brother, Hugh, was 19 years old. And that was the year they began planning this train robbery. 7 years earlier, the twins had left their hard-scrabbled New Mexico home after their father had left the family. Often they rode freight trains from place to place and making do with itinerant jobs such as picking fruit. And in 1920, Ray, who had joined the Radical Industrial Workers of America during World War I, was arrested in Vancouver, Washington during one of the nation's Red Scare sweeps of alleged Bolsheviks. He rejoined his twin in 1921 after spending a year in prison. In 1922, youngest brother Hugh d'Altremont graduated from high school where he had been a good student and a quarterback on the football team. He joined the twins at Northern Oregon logging camp where they worked under assumed names. And by mid-1923, they had decided to rob the Southern Pacific Railroad San Francisco-bound express while it was stopped at Siskiyou Tunnel 13 to test the brakes. The train, they believed, would be carrying several thousands of dollars in cash. Late on the morning of October 11, 1923, while Ray d'Altremont remained at the west-south side portal with the dynamite, his brothers armed themselves with a shotgun and Colt .45 automatic pistols and hiked over the pass to the other end of the tunnel to wait for the train. At about 12:30 p.m., southbound train number 13, the engine, mail car, 4 baggage cars, and 3 passenger cars arrived at the east portal where Ray and Hugh had concealed themselves in the brush. After the helper engine uncoupled and switched to the spur track, but before Southern Pacific engineer Sidney Bates and his fireman Marvin Singh could perform the brake test, Roy and Hugh climbed aboard the locomotive. They forced Bates to pull through the tunnel with the engine stopped just outside of the far portal. And right here, folks, is where the whole thing falls apart, man, because these guys, they were just complete idiots, at least in the way that they carried this whole thing out, and here's why. So once they forced the train through the tunnel, this is where the plan really fell apart. The three brothers yelled at the postal clerk Alvin Deltry of Ashland, Oregon, to unlock the door of the mail car, but he refused and locked himself inside. So instead of wiring a few sticks of dynamite to blow open the door, Roy used the entire box of dynamite and the explosion killed Daltrey instantly. The mail car, full of mail but carrying no currency or gold, became a fiery smoke-filled inferno. Thinking that the explosion was in the engine's boiler, Coyle Johnson, a brakesman from Ashland, walked through the tunnel to investigate. And just as he exited the west portal, the brothers shot him. And with more Southern Pacific employees from Siskiyou Station soon to arrive, they also shot Bates and Singh, the engineer and fireman, and all of the men lay dead. So folks, this whole thing unraveled into an unmitigated disaster for the d'Altremont brothers. The whole enterprise ended with a burnt-out mail car, no payout, and 4 men dead. And with the use of that plunger detonator that the brothers used, I can only think of a Wile E. Coyote type of operation going on here, and that's exactly what happened. Only in real life with real people dead, and not a roadrunner. So from that point on, the brothers do what would be natural in such an event, and they fled the Tunnel 13 area and ran into the woods to a well-stocked hideout deep in the dense brush. The d'Altremonts waited undetected for nearly 2 weeks. Armed posses searched the rugged country, U.S. Army and Forest Service Fire Patrol planes circled overhead, and the National Guard troops checked houses and barns along Pacific Highway to the south. The murderers seemed to have vanished. And furthermore, U.S. Postal Service inspectors converged on the northwest and were among the first federal agents to arrive at the scene. Postal Inspector in charge of Spokane, Washington, Charles Rutherford, led the investigation alongside special agents of the Southern Pacific Railroad and local law enforcement. And after they had arrived on the scene, forensic expert Edward Heinrich was able to determine the build, hair color, and job of the perpetrators through analysis of the remains in the train car in a small cabin discovered deep in the woods near the attack. The biggest clue was a pair of overalls left in the cabin. Inside the pocket was a registered mail receipt for Roy d'Altremont, who had sent nearly $50 to family in New Mexico. Inspectors now had a name to follow, d'Altremont. These guys are just brilliant, I gotta tell you. Not the way you want to do a robbery in the least. Regardless of the evidence found, the d'Altremont brothers are nowhere to be found. The investigation turned into an international manhunt, and the Post Office Department sent over 2.4 million wanted posters across the United States, Canada, Latin America, and Europe. And to boot, they offered a reward amount up to $15,900, which is over $250,000 in today's dollars, to attract more tips. After 4 years of searching, in 1927, postal inspectors located one of the brothers, Hugh, in the Philippines, who had enlisted as a private in the U.S. Army under an alias James C. Price. More brilliance. And Hugh got caught because one of his sergeants recognized him from one of the wanted posters. So, needless to say, once they got Hugh, it wasn't long before the twins Roy and Ray were caught as well. So once they caught Hugh, his arrest put photographs of Roy and Ray back into the newspapers, and someone recognized them in Steubenville, Ohio. The FBI arrested and returned the twins to Oregon, where they stood trial in Jackson County. The three brothers signed confessions in order to escape the almost certain death sentences, a deal that outraged railroad, postal employees, and everyone else in the area who wanted to see the men hang. So as to what happened to the brothers thereafter, by 1950, Roy's mental condition had deteriorated rapidly, and he spent his remaining years in the Oregon State Mental Hospital, where he died in 1983. I don't even know how he lived that long. Hugh was paroled in 1959 but died of cancer 3 months later, and in 1961 Ray was granted parole and worked as a custodian at the University of Oregon. He died in 1984. So this attack occurred near the end of the train robbing era in the United States, and that's when railroads had increased security to a level that made hijacking trains dangerous and unprofitable for thieves. Until nowadays, that is. Now you've got intermodal Amazon stuff to rob. You know, in Los Angeles and whatnot. So one thing the d'Altremont brothers did accomplish with their heinous crimes was that the fact that they left a legacy of the last great train robbery, which is, this whole thing was dubbed, and it's a nod to its rarity and the violent audacity of such an attempt. Other train robberies during and after the same period also carried the title. In Oregon, the Siskiyou Pass Tunnel No. 13 attack was among the last recorded train holdups, and one that remains firmly in the Oregon State's cultural memory. And with that, I'll wrap up the video, and if you enjoyed today's content, please leave a like button, and also if you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button, as hitting the like and subscribe buttons help my channel grow immensely. And don't forget to support the channel's efforts if you care to with the super thanks button on the taskbar. And if you don't want to do it that way, you can visit our print shop at Nickel Plate Limited on Etsy.com. And we thank you once again.